Before I stayed in my first hostel, I thought it was going to be completely dirty. I thought people were going to steal my and I thought there were going to be creeps watching me. All my fears turned out to be completely overblown and non-existent, and you'll find out why. Alright guys, today we're going to be talking about my first time staying in a hostel solo. Why on earth would you stay in a room, your most vulnerable time when you're sleeping, with like 8 to 12 strangers? These reasons were I wanted to meet people, I wanted to have unique experiences. Because in the USA, there's really no hostels. It's too spread out, and getting from place to place is expensive. You gotta park your car, you gotta pay for gas. Way different than where hostels are usually popular. And then my final reason was obviously to save money. So my solo hostel experience starts out when I was traveling from Barcelona. I stayed in Barcelona with my best friend, but he had to fly home, and that was the start of my solo traveling. I took a bus from Barcelona in Spain all the way up to France, into a little city called Toulouse. Another fish swimming, what the hell? It's so weird. Some of my biggest fears before I walked in. How was I gonna meet people? Because when you're staying with a friend, it's someone to support you, someone to talk to. If there's something awkward, you can just talk to your friend and it's not awkward anymore. But when you're by yourself, the pressure's on you to meet new people, the pressure's on you to have fun. So I arrived at the hostel, and before I even went in, probably my biggest fear was, how was I gonna meet people? I had my buddy with me before, and when you have somebody that you know, it's kind of an easy escape route, like a social safety net almost. If you're feeling awkward or feeling uneasy, you can just talk to your friend. But when you're by yourself, there's nobody to lean on. So I was kind of worried how I was gonna meet people and be normal, really. But I walked into this hostel, and from the moment I stepped in, it was super chill. I walked up to the front desk guy. I was kind of worried that he didn't speak English, but I was like, bonjour. And he smiled and he said, bonjour, how's it going? Blah, blah, blah. Started speaking in English, and I was like, ooh, okay. And then he was super nice. He gave me a whole tour of the hostel, showed me where the kitchen is, where my room is. And when he showed me my first ever solo hostel room, I was pretty shocked because, number one, there were bunk beds without any curtains, so zero privacy. And there were no actual lockers to lock your stuff up. So going into it, I was already a little uneasy, a little worried. But I said thank you to my hostel guy and just like kind of packed up my stuff. There was one guy though, and he was on the bottom bunk. And he was just chilling, reading a book on his phone. He's probably in his late 20s, I want to say. And he just started talking to me, asking me where I was from. He was the first ever social interaction, first time I talked to anybody solo traveling in a hostel. And he was just all around a nice, chill guy, like a normal guy. He was from a different part of France and was visiting friends who lived in Toulouse, and their house was full and he couldn't stay with them, so he just paid for a cheap hostel to stay at. I asked him about Toulouse. I asked him if he's ever been to this hostel. He said no. We just had a casual conversation. I had packed up my stuff, and it was a great first interaction. And after that, I just went and got my dinner. I went to the supermarket. I shopped for the first time solo. All the food was in French. I bought half a dozen eggs, 2 cups of ramen, and an orange juice bottle. And that night for dinner, put water in that ramen, cracked 4 eggs in it, and I had eggs and ramen for dinner that night. Now, hostels have this common area, like a lounge kind of spot near the lobby. And my first ever solo hostel, it was just an all-around chill. There were people eating, some people were chatting, some people were playing a board game, other people were cooking in the kitchen. It was really kind of a chill hostel. And in my experience, there's 3 types of hostels. There's the chill hostel, there's the party hostel that's crazy, and then there's something I'd call a family hostel, where you probably make the closest connections with people. And this one I would definitely describe as like a chill hostel. There's no pub crawl, nothing crazy. There's maybe probably something like a Jenga night where everybody plays Jenga, but it wasn't the night I stayed there. And the kitchen was small, easy to use, made my ramen and 4 eggs, delicious, filled me up. And they had a refrigerator, so I just wrote my name on my orange juice. Hostels usually have labels you can just put your name on in your room and then put it in the refrigerator. I've never had anybody steal my food. And after that, it got pretty late and it was time for me to go to bed, time for me to clock in for the night. And that's where I first used the bathroom. And my first ever hostel bathroom experience solo was actually pretty good. It was very clean, very private too. You had your own whole bathroom, the toilet was there, the shower, a whole private full bathroom. So I went in there by myself and used the entire bathroom. And the one bad part about my first ever solo bathroom hostel experience was the shower head. It wasn't like a normal shower where you turn it on and you have a good time. It was one of those where you had to handheld it. So I had to kind of like wash myself like a car. So literally not a shower. I had to like spray myself like I'm a dog, bro. It was crazy. And then after I was done showering, it was probably like pretty late, 1 a.m. Actually, my first ever solo hostel experience, I was probably the problematic roommate because I went to bed late at like 1 a.m. after using the bathroom. And then I had to wake up at 6 a.m. in order to get my train. So really, I probably woke up my roommates twice that night. However, I was an empath, okay? I wasn't completely selfish, guys. I grabbed all my stuff, threw it outside, and then packed up my bag so I wasn't making so much noise inside the room. I went downstairs and bought breakfast. It was the one time I ever bought a hostel breakfast, and I never did again, just because it's too expensive and not really worth it. But while I was eating breakfast, I had my second ever solo traveling hostel social interaction. There were these two Australian girls. They were packing up their bags, and they were talking about how they were going to go on a flight, and they didn't know if their bags were too heavy because the airline they were taking was probably some type of American brand airline, and the weight limit of their bags was in like pounds, not kilograms. And so they were kind of feeling their bags, and I don't know how they knew I was American. Maybe I was talking or something, I forget. But they asked me like, hey, would this be about 20 pounds or something like that? Would this be about 40 pounds? And I lifted it up, and it was definitely lighter than whatever they said, because I said, yeah, you're good. This can be fine. And they're like, oh, thank you so much. Another positive social experience in the books, solo traveling at my first hostel. So for my first hostel solo experience, I learned that hostels are actually pretty safe. My first ever solo hostel didn't have a locker at all. I just had my stuff freeballing it, and nobody with it. And I had some pretty valuable stuff in that bag. I had like my laptop and stuff. And for women who are kind of worried about solo traveling, 80% of solo travelers are women. Another fish. What the hell? So I thought hostels were gonna be kind of unsafe. I thought I was gonna meet creeps. I thought people were gonna steal my stuff, but that was not the case. I thought hostels were gonna be pretty dirty, but that was not the case either. In fact, that first hostel I stayed at was probably cleaner than a lot of hotels I've stayed at. So would I solo travel again? 100% yes. And my first ever solo hostel experience was a great one, a very chill vibe. Low-key, kind of the perfect first chill hostel experience you can kind of ask for. And even on my first hostel, not trying to do anything crazy, I had hit all my goals I set out for. I wanted to meet new people. Check. On my first ever hostel, without even trying, I met that French guy and those two Australian girls. And both of them were absolutely amazing and so nice. And then I also had the goal of having a unique experience. Another 100% check. I had never seen a shower like that in the US. Maybe I've used a shower like that once in the US. I would have never discovered Toulouse, that city, and what it was like. I would have never learned how to buy ramen and eggs in a French supermarket with no English. And I would have never checked into a hostel by myself if I hadn't taken that leap of faith and gone solo for the first time. Whenever I meet people who have solo traveled in hostels before, I immediately click with them. There's just something that changes about your personality and your character. I don't know what it is. You learn skills, you learn how to be on your own. Independence, there's just something that builds you up, and you take it with you throughout the rest of your life and in all interactions you have with other people. Comment down below if you've solo traveled in hostels before, or if you want to. All right, guys, peace and love. Ciao.